For Mornington.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today to speak on the Criminal Organisations Control Amendment Bill 2024. In essence, there are four major changes that are coming. One, changes to the Unlawful Association Scheme in Part 5A of the Act and provision for IBAC to have oversight functions in relation to the Unlawful Association Scheme. Two, the replacement of this scheme for making declarations and control orders with a scheme for making serious crime prevention orders. Three, the prohibition of the public display of insignia of certain organisations. And finally, four, the prohibition of adult members of certain organisations from entering certain areas at Victorian government worksites. A bit of history before we get into the substance of this debate. It was in 2012 that the Liberals and Nationals, when in government, introduced the Criminal Organisations Control Act 2012 to strengthen efforts against organised crime here in Victoria. Since then, the Act has undergone multiple amendments, including a 2015 Labor government-led revision that introduced the Unlawful Association Scheme, with further updates to these provisions in 2018. And on the bill we have today, government reviews of the earlier amendments conducted in 2019 and 2022, but not publicly released, reportedly called for substantial changes to make the laws more practical. Despite this, no action was taken until the introduction of this bill, with this bill marking the third attempt by this Labor government to establish a workable unlawful association scheme that works. While this third attempt by the Labor government lowers some thresholds to take action under the unlawful association scheme, it also raises others. Whether this version will work is anybody's guess. And it is one thing for Labor to provide IBAC with more powers to oversee VicPol's expanded powers under an unlawful association scheme, but there is no guarantee that budget funding will follow. IBAC is already underfunded. As mentioned by the then IBAC Commissioner, Robert Redlich, with IBAC's current resources, they can only investigate approximately 2% of complaints concerning police matters that come to them and have to refer back to Victoria Police the balance. It is therefore indeed a concern that no dollar figure has been put on any additional resources for IBAC dedicated to this additional oversight function. And really, under this Labor government and the former Andrews government, and their record of corruption and secrecy, and indeed their mismanagement of the budget as well, is it really a surprise that IBAC is underfunded by the government? I can tell you this Allen Labor government is too busy hopping into bed with the seedy underworld figures and the sons of anarchy rather than funding IBAC. Which brings me to another change brought about by this bill, with the banning of the public display of these insignia of certain organisations. This is too little too late and has often been brought about because the government has been exposed. They have been totally exposed for enabling bikies and criminals to infiltrate Victorian taxpayer-funded major projects. Under this Labor government, reports of misconduct, intimidation, rorts, standover tactics and thuggish behaviour on big bill sites has become commonplace. Yet the Labor government has continuously failed to take appropriate action despite multiple warnings. Since 2016, Victoria Police have known of construction unions using outlaw biker gangs as hired muscle in industrial disputes. This Labor government should be ashamed of itself. Victorians deserve better than a Labor government beholden to a militant union. Really, this Labor government should be putting the onus on builders to make sure that they aren't engaging with anyone with criminal associations in the procurement stage, rather than just banning them from sites. In response to the shocking allegations as well of criminality and bikie infiltration across major projects, the Victorian Liberals and Nationals introduced the Government Construction Projects Integrity Bill 2024 into Parliament. This bill would have prevented bikies and known organisations from gaining employment on Victorian major construction projects. A bill which would have begun at the procurement stage so that when contracts are being led, there's an obligation on builders at the time and after that time. And of course, in typical Labor government fashion, they rejected this attempt to bring this bill, playing politics. If the Labor government cannot be trusted to keep people like John Setka off of building big build sites, how can it be trusted to get this legislation right? Deputy Speaker, furthermore, whether the proposed powers to ban members of certain prescribed organisations from Victorian government worksites will work in practice is debatable, given the Hells Angels, Bandidos and others don't usually publish their current membership lists. The ability of the Victorian Police to prove that any person is a member of such an organisation is likely to be challenging. Again, the Labor government cannot even keep John Setka off big build sites, so it is likely going to struggle when it comes to outlaw motorcycle gangs and their members. During the second reading speech of the bill we are debating today, the Attorney-General stated that, and I quote, "The scheme has not been used since it commenced in 2016, end quote. And this really is because the legislation that the Labor government introduced had multiple deficiencies, failing to provide police with effective tools to combat unlawful organisations within criminal organisations, particularly outlaw motorcycle gangs. The then Shadow Attorney-General and now Opposition Leader stated at the time, and I quote, "You cannot introduce tougher laws if you're not going to invest in the police needed to enforce those laws and expect the intended outcome," end quote. Almost a decade after these comments, what do we have today? We have these tough strongman laws being introduced so the Labor government can show off how seriously they are taking crime. Meanwhile, the Victoria Police are suffering from an ongoing resourcing crisis with nearly 1,000 vacancies and 43 stations, including the Mornington Police Station, having reduced hours or being closed. And just a few months ago, it was revealed that Victoria Police is funding daily operations from more than $100 million in savings gleaned from hundreds of staff vacancies. This money should be used for recruitment efforts, not daily operations, and not to cover Labor's $84 million increase to work cover premiums. And yet this Allen Labor government has completely failed to adequately resource Victoria Police, meaning less police on the streets, a harder effort for existing police still on the job, and more youths breaking into homes and vehicles, more youths and other people running rampant and terrifying our communities, and more violent crimes being committed on our streets. Indeed, last year in December, it was reported that the Mornington Peninsula, including my electorate of Mornington, is one of the state's top 5 youth crime hotspots. The data for last year states that there have been 75 cars stolen, 45 aggravated burglaries, 26 serious assaults, and 10 incidents involving weapons or explosives. Ever since my election, I have had multiple concerned constituents, and families indeed, approach me about spates of crime in the area which they have never experienced before. I've had, for example, Justin contact me recently, a local business owner who had his house broken into on two occasions and had assets stolen worth $35,000. He has lived on the peninsula his entire life and has always felt safe, and now he and his family are scared in their own homes. I've spoken to Stuart, whose neighbours were robbed at knife point in their house just a few weeks ago, or Gillian from Mount Eliza, whose property has had 3 incidents this year alone, the most recent involving intruders just outside her bedroom window. I've had people like Barbara, Paula, Helen, Min, and so many others contact me, all fearful of this crime spree. What does the Labor government have to say to them and many other scared Victorians? If I were the minister, I would be embarrassed and totally embarrassed. I do note that the Mornington Police are doing the best that they can to tackle the increased crime rates. However, it is clear that they are under-resourced and underfunded, with the Mornington Police Station having had its hours reduced from 24 to 16 from Sunday to Wednesday last year in terms of its reception hours. I've also personally spoken to police officers in the local area who have stated that they need more resources and staffing to tackle the increased crime rates. But I do want to seriously say that the few police that we do have on the peninsula, even though we need more, are doing a fantastic job, particularly in the context of the revolting protests today, yesterday and throughout this week outside of the Melbourne Exhibition Centre. So far, the levels of violence have been pretty unprecedented for a protest in our city, with dozens being arrested for assaulting police, obstructing police, hindering police, assault, arson, blocking roadways and more. We've even seen acid being thrown at police. This kind of behaviour is nothing short of disgraceful and has no place in Victoria, and it's shameful to have seen the Greens seemingly supportive of these acts of protest as well. The sheer hypocrisy of the protesters using violence while also protesting against violence just goes to show the content of character of many of these protesters.